Good morning. Today we talk about the proposed new laws, the laws concerning restaurants and the new rules that are likely to come in effect next year, that's 2017. Ontario government for once has taken a very sensible decision, and that is that it has formulated a law which, as I said earlier, would be implemented next year. And under that law, all restaurants would have to give the calorific value of their menus. What happens actually is that when a customer goes to a restaurant and then looks at the menu, he is tempted either by the taste, or by the name, or by the presentation. And the fact that how much sodium is there, or how much salt is there, or what's the calories intake, he is not aware. He has no meter to measure it, and as a result, he overeats. The result is burgeoning obesity. And obesity in Canada is a national epidemic. Not only that, intake of high amount of salt can be dangerous for the high blood pressure and the cardiac troubles. Sometimes even very seemingly harmless, natural foods can have devastating effect on you. Would you be amazed that the shrimp salad in Lancaster has a one plate, one serving, 3,780 calories. Normal calorie intake would be a couple of thousand, that's all. But and you are thinking it's salad, shrimp salad. Shrimp, omega-3, and salad should have no caloric value, but 3,700 odd values. You go to McDonald's, you ordered for a salad, kale salad. The kale is a healthy antioxidant vegetable, and naturally you are under a presumption that it's going to be very healthy. Do you know the calories of a kale salad in McDonald's is more calories than a Mac burger, Big Mac? So what do you do? Now, under the new law, what the restaurants would be forced to do is to give the product and the calorific value. As a matter of fact, I would have liked that they also mention how much salt is being used. But at present, the laws are only restricted to give the calorific values. Well, anyway, a good start. Nevertheless, there are a couple of pitfalls. You know, our governments always take half-hearted measures. This new regulation would be applicable only to those restaurants which have 20 or more outlets. So Tim Hortons, McDonald's, KFC, Wimpy, blah blah blah, all of them would be covered under the regulation. But there are hundreds and thousands of the small restaurants all over the world, all over the province, all over the city, that would escape the dragnet. Are we sure that those restaurants are not patronized by the people? As a matter of fact, more people go to one-stop restaurant, a typical boutique restaurant, what I'll call it, than to the chain restaurants, especially for their food. They go to a fast food for a cup of coffee or something, some snack or something like that. But if they want to take a proper food, they'll go to XYZ, a boutique, a standalone restaurant, their favorites. They can go for ethnic to an Indian or a Pakistani one, to a Japanese one, to a Korean one, to a Chinese one. Now, for example, in Chinese, I think there's only one restaurant chain, Mandarin, which will be covered. The rest all would not be covered. Japanese and Indians don't have the chains, and if they have the chains, their max is 3 or 4. You'll hardly find 20 outlets for a single restaurant. So, the whole concept undergoes a change. For example, agreed that the Tim Hortons and the McDonald's and their ilk would be covered under it. But statistically, 2/3 of the customers for their food go to the small restaurants and they are not covered. So by and large, the problem of obesity and overeating would continue. Now, this has two negative effects. A, this is discriminatory in nature. You cannot have one rule for a large chain and another for a small chain, especially when it affects the public health. Secondly, it is going to have negative effect on these fast foods, and in the end, because it's not going to have any effect at all as far as the health is concerned. What really happens is that when you go to a fast food, normally you just order what is in your mind, you go with a preconceived notion of what are you going to have. You are going to have a McBurger or you are going to have a salad. You go to Tim Hortons and do you go in for a donut or do you go in for a soup? You have already taken a decision. When you go to a proper restaurant, I mean it's not a fast food joint, then you go, you glance at the menu, you look at it, you discuss it with your friend or your family, and then you order it. In fast food, you hardly ever look at the menu. Hardly ever. So, the very purpose of the law is defeated. The purpose of the law is always the maximum of good of maximum people with the least hindrance to the others. By others, I mean the people who have got to implement it. Here is the restaurants. Now here we are asking the large chains to identify the caloric value in their menus. Excellent. But we just ignore the fact that hardly a small percentage would be glancing at those menu cards. The large number of the people who will go to the other restaurants which have got no branch, or 1 or 2 or 3 branches, would escape the dragnet. And hence, it will be of no use. You see, normally, any law should have tentacles enough to cover all aspects. And that is why there is a complete process. A law is formulated, not a law, but a proposal is formulated. It is sent for the public consultation. It's given to the major groups for their comments, and then it's introduced in the parliament. There's a first reading, there's a second reading, it's referred to the committees, and the committees then have to go into in-depth analysis, study all the aspects, and then it goes back to the House for the third reading. When passed, when it goes to the governor, Lieutenant Governor or the Governor General for approval, and then it becomes a law. So this long process has a purpose, and the purpose is to ensure A, nobody is unnecessarily traumatized or burdened. Fair. It is for the public good. Fair. It covers practically all the people. Unfair. So if you take a reality check, this law would only be applicable for a very small, negligible minority. And the majority of the customers will be deprived of the benefit of knowing the calorific value of the food they are eating. They'll continue to take fajitas, which might be 3,000 caloric value in a small Mexican restaurant, which is not a part of a major chain. But if they go to a major chain, yes. Secondly, calorific value when we are giving, we have also got to give the ingredients. And as I said earlier, all the menus possibly give the ingredients they are using. But they don't give the quantification, they don't quantify the spices, especially salt. As a matter of fact, it's incumbent on the restaurants to identify not as high salt, low salt, medium salt, no, but mention how many teaspoons of salt are there per serving. That would enable people to order proper things. You say it's a low salt. What does low salt mean? It's as ridiculous as what they call it. This is a sodium-less salt. Now, sodium-less salt is basically more harmful because it's a potassium chloride. While normal salt is NaCl, sodium chloride, the non-sodium salt is potassium chloride. Potassium is required in the body as is sodium. But the high quantity of potassium is equally, if not worse, than sodium is. So this is a contradiction in terms. When they say low in sodium or low in salt, they are not exactly telling how much salt they mean to be low. Secondly, if the salt is low, what other things they have added to maintain a balance or to preserve the product? The preservatives are also extremely important. So the menu should mention, apart from the ingredients, the quantity of the salt or the substitutes thereof. Like, say there's no sugar, then the fructose is there, or the corn syrup is there, which is equally bad. So the law must be comprehensive to be useful. It must cover one and all, not a select few. And it must be implemented in full faith. That I hope would be. But the first two aspects are lacking in this regulation. And I trust that the government will have a second look at it and then come up with a proper, well-codified regulation applicable to all the restaurants, matching not only the calories, but the salt and the substitutes thereof, sugar and the substitutes thereof, and the trans fats and the substitutes thereof. That way we can hope for some benefit to this overweight nation. Thank you.